Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, how you doing? Yep, it's that day that will live in infamy, and I guess it does because it's 80 years and we're still noting it. December 7th, ladies and gentlemen. However, it is 2021 now. Susan should be joining us because it's Tuesday. Hi, Suze.
Hi, I am. Is it Pearl Harbor Day?
I know. Yeah, it is, December 7th. I think Mom and Dad, or Dad, was at a Chicago Bears-Packer game when it happened.
Really?
Ask Mom someday. Yeah. I don't know why that's in my head, but they were both at Northwestern. They were in Chicago, and I think so. Or somebody Google, was there a Chicago Bear-Packer game at Soldiers Field on December 7th, 1941? I think so. Anyway.
I have never heard that. So, but,
okay.
You know,
well,
that's just an interesting thing about children growing up in the same house, separated by years that know different things.
No. And I'm not sure I know that, but I think, why would I think that? Why would I even think? Somebody see if the Bears played on December 7th at Soldier Field on Pearl Harbor. I'm serious. I think Dad was at that game. I don't know that she was, but they were an item, and she would have been what, 19, 20?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow, and their lives were just about to go flooey. Pretty amazing.
What I've always found interesting is Mother's memory of that time is she never talks about being scared or worried or
I know, right.
Ever. She has these cheerful memories of it, and I don't get it. You know,
you're
she
right.
just tells funny stories about the silly places they were forced to live and blah, 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 blah. And it's like it had no sense of peril or strangeness or I'm a very naive young married woman sitting in Florida in a boarding house all by myself and I'm fine, you know?
Even though planes were crashing outside the windows?
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, right. That's one of her stories, that the planes were crashing and who would run in to save the pilots.
This was like a training base. There was something, I don't know, you're training pilots somewhere in Florida where my father, I don't know why they were there. He was up the USS Sarasota, so maybe that's where his ship was docked. No, I don't think so. I think he was still in, I don't know. Training. But it is interesting that we don't know much. And you're right, there were funny stories, though.
All I remember her ever telling,
she was a young woman in love. That's all. They were young people in love.
But if my husband went off to World War II for 4 years, I wouldn't have happy little, pleasant little memories. That's when Dad was home on leave. That's where we saw the president go by in San Francisco. And that's all that's it.
And that's when Bill was conceived. Your father came.
That's right. These are the stories.
His ship put in San Francisco, and he, through coded messages, let me know to somehow get there. And we had such a wonderful time.
Across country to San Francisco.
Right. But
they stayed at this grand hotel in San Francisco, which 40 years later, Eric and I stayed in.
And Harry Truman went by in a Harry Truman?
Yeah.
Franklin? No. That doesn't
was it Roosevelt?
Sense. No, it was Harry Truman. So that was later. That was a different thing. Anyway, who knows? But these stories, that is right. These stories are, and what the hell did she do during the war? Didn't she work for a little bit as
She was a decoder.
A decoder? Well, why doesn't she talk about that experience?
Well, why do you think she still sits around and does cryptograms?
Okay, fine, but what did she? I mean, there is no. It's true.
That's what she did. That I got out of her because I did say, "Hey, Mom, everybody was Rosie the Riveter. What did you do?" She said, "Oh, I worked in decoding messages."
I don't know. Ask her more about it. It's ridiculous. Young people living through consequential history and just being blasé. I don't understand. She must have been, come on, she must have been terrified. She must have been missing him. She must have. And
well, all I know is that you and I would have just spent the time throwing up. So I'm just not sure.
Yeah, that's about right. Well, that's the difference between the greatest.
You would have been eating and throwing up, and I would have been not eating and throwing up.
That would have been about right. God.
Oh God.
Okay,
I don't know, but that's what I've wondered for years. You know, how her memory of World War II as a young bride sounds like a 1950s sitcom.
Is she awake and up and conscious?
I don't know. I'm in Chicago.
Oh, that's right. You're in Chicago. I thought you were in Green Bay with her.
It's one of those rare times. No, I left yesterday.
Oh, okay. I was thinking we could put her on and see if she can remember anything. Whatever. Okay. And you know what? I have to say, I've been having I am an empath, and I saw a picture of some poor Ukrainian soldiers sitting around waiting to be attacked by Russia.
Right.
And here I see, here's how these things happen. Everybody knows Russia, apparently Biden and Putin are going to have a little talk today, which will go nowhere. But Russia's going to invade a sovereign country, Ukraine, which Russia petulantly believes belongs to it, because there used to be something called the Soviet Union.
Right, and it has things that Russia wants.
Well, but there's a real affinity somehow. The Ukraine, a lot of big Soviet Union people came from the Ukraine. There was no sense that there was. But can you imagine? And I was feeling for what's his name, the president, the guy who used to be
a comedian, right?
A comedian. I don't think he's laughing much since he's gotten into politics, because now he's a president of a country. He figured prominently in Donald Trump getting into the White House, if only because. Remember all that?
Yeah.
With all the jerks around, that's where Manafort and even supposedly Cohen, they were doing things in Ukraine, and then Giuliani was big with Ukraine, and they were trying to say that Ukraine was where Hunter Biden. Do you remember all? And then this poor jerk. He's not a jerk. This president of Ukraine, who's about to have his country invaded, gets a call from Trump. Right? Do we remember that?
No, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. But which only reminds me of the hysterical thing. Did you talk about how Tucker Carlson asked Hunter Biden to write a college recommendation for his kid?
You're effing kidding.
No, there's emails were released between Biden and Carlson, from a few years ago, wherein he is sweetly and, companionably, joshing around with Hunter Biden and saying, it would be so helpful as you, an alumnus of the school, would, please write a recommendation for my son. I know it would be extremely helpful, and let's get to dinner real soon.
Wow. What a vile human being.
I mean, it's just.
But I mean,
it's the chutzpah that then he can go on camera to a person that he, and just like sleep at night. I don't know how. I mean, how is that possible? And how? And his son knows this about him, for example.
Well, I don't. Who the hell knows?
Well, his son knows that Hunter Biden wrote that and that his father, then behaved as his father did. I mean, I don't know how you can shame yourself thusly in front of your children, if no one else, in front of your children.
Well, if what is that doesn't fall far from the tree?
Apples and things.
Well, if the apple doesn't fall far
sometimes it rolls a bit after it falls.
Yeah, well, it could be, the sun is every bit as repulsive as the body. I don't.
Well,
know.
Of course, when
having been brought up with his, his sense of
strong sense of
values.
Ideals and ethics.
Oh, yes, exactly right. So who the hell knows? Hey, before we get into, but really, a moment of thought for these poor Ukrainians who are about to have Russia.
Just hearing tick, tick.
They're no match for the Russian. Can you imagine? And the world just sits. In that regard, it's sort of like the world sitting and letting Germany go into this country, then into that country, and not wanting to get involved.
That's
and
right.
We've already come out and said, we're not threatening war with them, of course, but we're economic war with them. But
we're going to give them a real talking
Zelensky, right? Zelensky, I think, is the poor guy in Ukraine.
Yeah.
What the hell? Anyway, so I'm just saying, I don't know what you have to do today, but poor Joe Biden has to sternly talk to Vladimir Putin today and tell him that if he invades Ukraine, we're going to try to hurt him financially. Big effing deal. Whatever. Okay. Oh, here was an interesting little bit, and I don't know if you saw this, but how Omicron got its name.
No, I did not see it.
Okay, so it turns out that this naming of, Delta and Omicron, that is a result of the World Health Organization very recently saying we've got to stop
naming things after countries.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the practice of describing these viruses to the places that they were first detected is, obviously it stigmatizes the place. And they pointed out that, the Spanish flu, that was the last big epidemic in, 1918. It didn't originate in Spain. And in fact, the sense is now that it probably originated in the United States.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The United States names it after someplace else when they figure out where it's from.
Well, I don't know if they knew, but this whole, this desire to use this, and just because the poor, more on top of things, South Africans who were actually doing the kind of sequencing that would discover a variant.
And doing a world service by saying, excuse me, right.
Right. And now, so anyway, that's how they do it. There's Greek letters. And believe it or not, there was an alpha, beta, gamma somewhere, but didn't rise to the level of, Delta. This one we knew. And since Delta, they're following the alphabet, just like, hurricane things.
Right.
And Omicron, which, by the way, I have to admit, was a Greek letter that had not gotten into my head. When I heard it, I thought,
they must not use it for fraternities or sororities.
Right. How is that? They must not. Is it because it's so friggin' hard to say? Omicron. The M and the N get your tongue a little tied. But Omicron is the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet. Delta is the 4th. But there was an alpha, beta, and gamma. And then, believe it or not, there are other variants that were, but they don't get in the news because they ended up being, something we didn't have to worry about.
They just didn't, there was nothing to be.
There was a lambda and there was a mu. And I guess the next letter that the Omicron should have been was nu, N-U. That's another Greek letter I don't know. N-U?
Yeah, well.
And they passed over NU because they said it would sound like it would confuse people because they think
you were saying it's a new virus.
Exactly. And so they skipped over it. So
right, they don't want people to say 9/11 because when you go to the telephone, there's no 11 button. Honest to God.
I bet that's true.
No, honest to God.
But there is a 9/11 now, so it's just as well. I mean,
right.
You say 9/11, that means something.
Yeah,
911 means something else.
Right.
But, so I don't know the Greek alphabet, obviously. So they didn't use nu. The next one is G, X-I. I don't know how it's pronounced. It's pronounced G in China, I guess, sort of. So
but
that was the
not
next
Greek.
one. No, X-I. How is that pronounced?
I don't know.
Greek alphabet. They skipped over that. Now, why?
Because no one knows how to pronounce it.
Also, because it's the name of the
Chinese prime minister, president, whatever.
Strong man. And he's not known for his sense of humor. So, no, he would not want a, potentially lethal virus named after him. So they kept moving on. I mean, they skipped nu, and then they skipped XI. And what's next? Omicron. So that's how it happened. And the WHO said, World Health Organization said, who's on first? Maybe the World Health Organization said that they do this to avoid causing offense to any cultural, social, national, regional, professional, or ethnic group. Okay, so that's why they did. That's how Omicron came to be, because technically it was supposed to be new.
Well, I got it. I mean, you can't depend on people to. Well, that would be a tough one. It's a new virus. It's the new virus. It's a
variant, so it doesn't.
It would be hard to make it clear in at least our language what that meant.
And they didn't say they skipped over XI because of the Chinese president. They said they skipped over XI because it is a very common name in China. So there you have it. Oh God.
Well, in that sense, they were trying not to call it the China virus. Because it wouldn't be thought of as a Greek letter.
Here's what I want to ask. Oh, please have this come up.
Did no one know whether there was a Bear-Packer game in 1940?
No one has said anything. No one has said anything. Did you happen to see? Let's see, my friggin'. Okay, I hate that wheelie thing that happens, and then you've lost total control.
Yes.
Whenever that wheelie thing happens, does it ever correct itself and actually produce something, or do you always end up leaving in? It's. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Do you ever just wait? Do you ever wait for it to stop pinwheeling? No. I always cancel out of that whole thing, restart whatever app that is, and see what happens next. Sometimes I restart the whole device.
Well, that's not what I'm going to do, but I wanted to ask you if you saw something that was put into evidence in the Elizabeth, what's her name? Holmes trial, the Theranos. Anybody following that trial? There's so many trials, and you know what? Would normally be huge news, and we're not following them because we're all just trying to stay alive. And the other trial that normally we'd be yapping about is this the trial in.
Okay, just so you know, I'm paying absolute attention to you, but on Monday, December 8th, the United States of America officially entered World War II, and the games played on December 7th, 1941. Chicago Bears 34. Doesn't say who they played.
Well, if they gave them 34, surely they're going to tell. Sounds like they beat whoever they played, but I think it was the Packers. Where? Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Well, okay.
Holmes memo. Wait. Holmes memo. Theranos. Let me see if we can find it. Okay. So there was this memo, I'm hoping I can find it, put into the testimony. If she's found guilty, she's going to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to find it. If anyone can find, you know what I'm looking for. She is somebody who was so what's the word? I want to say controlled.
Oh, by her boyfriend.
No. See, that's why I don't want to say controlled, because by herself. In that she wrote, and it's now part of the trial. She had, we all have like little to-do lists. Her to-do list for one day was the most specific, mind-boggling thing I have ever seen. And I wanted to share it with you, and I thought I had it, but I got the wheelie thing. It in her handwriting. And it starts like, if anyone's got it, send it to me. It starts like at 4 a.m. or 4:30 at the most. Wake up. And then 4 to 4:15, get dressed, do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. Then she starts what turns out to be a 3-hour routine of meditation, exercise, prayer, all laid out in increments of 20 minutes, 40 minutes, this, that, where everything, shower, get dressed again, get her, and interspersed with all this is sort of these pep talk sort of things to herself.
Affirmations.
Or reminders, like, I will, never be reactive. Always be proactive. Never raise your voice. never this, that, and talking about how she would not even smile, I think, to create this kind of, it is the creepiest, the most mind-boggling thing. And to assume then that that was not a special day, she must have done that every day. This is the woman who sweet-talked the likes of Henry Kissinger, Jim Mattis, George Shultz, Rupert Murdoch into giving her lots of money. They sat on her board or they gave her money. And she was running a friggin' scam that could have killed people. It was a blood testing thing that she said did all this stuff, and it didn't.
It didn't.
And people bought into it. No, it was unbelievable.
And used the tests. I mean, that's the problem. They used the tests.
So oh God, I'm.
You know, we can't really care about why. We have to. That's
Well, there is. People were just fascinated by this handwritten.
Okay, the notes include guidelines such as, I am never a minute late. I show no excitement. I call bullshit immediately.
Yeah.
She said those rules all came from Balwani, the boyfriend.
Oh, she's blaming him.
Yes.
It's in her handwriting. He didn't create, her schedule. That's in her handwriting.
Right, it is. I'm looking at it.
And it's really.
4 to 4:15 a.m. Wash face change. 4:15 to 4:45 meditate clear mind. 4:45 to 5:20 workout. 5:20 to 6:20 change, shower, shave. Perfect.
Shave. Here's what I want to know. Shave?
Perfect, she says. Shave? Well, she must shave her legs every day. You and I were Wisconsin hairless.
How could you don't have to shave your legs every day? Are you friggin' kidding me?
Well, people do. 6:20 to 6:30, pray. 6:30 to 6:45, breakfast, banana, whey.
Oh, yeah, what she was eating.
And can't spell banana either.
Banana.
B-A-N-N-A.
Right. So she misspells banana. But when you see what she eats, it is.
Salad with, this is lunch, salad with tofu and tabbouleh and green drink. Dinner,
Wonderful.
Broccoli with quinoa, garlic something, and balsamic.
Horrible. So that's why she's skinny as a rail. But, I mean, how driven in this bizarre way do you have to be to live your life on a schedule like that? And to be telling yourself, having to repeat to yourself, these little things about never this, do that, blah, blah, blah. Unbelievable. Anyway.
My hands are always in my pockets or gesturing. Well, that's
what
awkward.
The hell is that? That's weird.
Just awkward. Here, I'm going to remove a hand from my pocket, make a gesture, and then immediately return my hand to my pocket.
If your hands are in your pockets, it would seem you don't want to use your hands. So it's weird that she uses them to gesture, and if they're not gesturing, she hides them in a pocket. What's that about?
I have no idea.
Okay, so there. Anyway, why it was introduced into evidence, I don't know, unless it's an effort by her to say, this is how controlled I was. And then
that is why
it was because of him.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I wanted to share this. Here's another to-do list I want to share. This one I think I can get to. This I saw initially on Twitter, but it's so right on the money. It's if the Republican Party had a to-do list, here it is. Republican to-do list. First of all, under the title, Keep Them Poor, the subtitles are no minimum wage, break unions, cut welfare, cut Social Security. Those are all Republican things. And what do they add up to? Keep people poor. Keep them sick is their next to do. Repeal Obamacare, cut disability benefits, privatize veterans' health care. All GOP efforts. Keep them stupid is number 3 on the list. Deny science, revise history, cut school funding. And number 4 is control the women. No equal pay, pro-life, close Planned Parenthood, and more. But when you see, because all of those that is absolutely what their agenda. I mean, the current party is not for anything. They're simply against. They do not have any policies or, bills they want. They
have a policy. Their policy is to get back in power and retain the power they have. That's their policy.
So they're refusing to be legislators. They're simply blocking any attempt by the Democrats to produce what they're supposed to produce, which is legislation. I think that's why they call it a legislature. Oh, God.
No, they're the only thing they do is refuse to allow anyone to get anything done when they aren't in a power to take away other people's, aren't in a position to take away other people's rights. So right now, what they are doing is refusing to fill all of those government positions that were emptied by Trump and hampering the government at all, and they're just sitting there. They won't put people back in positions.
Yep.
I mean, they are doing stuff, but none of it is constructive. It is all destructive. And I do not understand how people cannot just see that. There it is.
I know. Well, they are also, trying to subvert the efforts of the government, which happens to be led by a Democrat, to get this virus under control. And everything they're doing is to subvert that and then blame him for it not being under control.
Right. And meanwhile, this is the puzzling part meanwhile, the people that are mostly dying from this are their own voters. So it's puzzling, but go ahead. One.
That's okay, Suze. I'll give you that one. I was with a friend the other day, and we were conversing, and she kept interrupting me and then saying, okay, go ahead. Go ahead. She must have said it 7,000 times. And I didn't call her on it, but man, I noted it. And I thought, gee whiz. All right. So here's this other thing. Republicans are now actively cheering on bad things. They love that there's inflation right now. And if you think they don't, listen to this. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who is the guy in charge of the Senate Republicans' 2022 midterm campaign, said this, quote, You can see what's going to happen next. We're going to continue to have inflation, and then interest rates are going to go up. This is a gold mine for us. He actually said that to the Wall Street Journal.
Yep.
This is a gold mine for us. Wow. It's hard not to despise these people.
Yeah, well, I don't see why you should try not to. Did you note, by the way, that David Nunes is leaving Congress?
Devin.
Right. Devin, right.
He's leaving Congress, first of all, because he was going to lose. His district had been changed or has changed over, and there's no way he was going to win. And so he has been put in charge of Trump's media empire, which doesn't exist yet. But was doing real good for about 30 seconds until people thought, and then all of a sudden the shares started losing value. A typical Trump business. It's gonna fail, guys. Yeah. It ain't going anywhere. It is all just.
It's going to get raped. The money's going to line his pockets, and then you're going to sit there, holding a bunch of nothing. Why anybody would partner with this person?
Here's somebody saying, "There's no other way to put this. Her daily schedule might just be the most insane and ultimately tragic time accounting by a CEO that most of us will ever come across."
Yeah.
And by the way, did you see it's written on a notepad from a hotel in Singapore called Raffles, the Plaza. And here's a little note where the cheapest room is $634 a night. Yeah. Wow.
Well, but she wasn't having a good time.
Yeah, she wasn't having a good time.
She was not having a good time.
Well, can you imagine saying things like, "I show no excitement. Calm, direct, pointed, non-emotive. I speak rarely. When I do, crisp and concise." I'm doing this because Milton sent me a story that someone had written on it. And this is, by the way, the guy she's saying is responsible for all this is going to be tried as well.
Right.
Separately. Anyway, she says that back when she wrote this, she believed what she was saying. Now that she's facing the possibility of as much as 20 years in prison, she's blaming it on him.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's sort of like Kyle Rittenhouse now saying it probably wasn't such a good idea to go to Kenosha.
Yeah. On second thought, yeah, right. Okay, well, that's fine and dandy. 2 people are dead. Another grievously wounded. And he'll be a hero. He's going to be a congressional staffer if he agrees to that. He'll be speaking at the Republican convention. He's now going to be a gazillionaire and on the speaking tours for the upcoming fascist state. I'm sorry.
I know.
Hey, by the way, in regard to the January 6th investigation, we have 2 people now who have agreed to come before the committee, but who ain't going to tell them anything.
No, they're going to plead the 5th.
And those would be Jeffrey Clark, who is the guy who was in the Justice Department, who tried to subvert the election from within Trump's Justice Department, actively tried to knock people off. And then there's John Eastman, the guy who wrote the famous memo of how Pence could stop everything in its tracks.
Right.
So those are the two, Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman, who are going to be pleading the fifth. Now, as we know, that is something you can do. But we all pretty much think this, and I'm going to do a quote from Donald J. Trump. He said, "The mob takes the fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?" That's
exactly.
Donald Trump. Right. That's Donald Trump there spoke for, I think, almost all of us. Because why? If you've got nothing to hide.
Right,
if you haven't done anything criminal, do you take the fifth? And, you know, Susan, there's a list here of people who have recently taken the fifth when subpoenaed by a congressional committee.
Are they all in jail for some offense at this point?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or they got pardoned by Donald Trump.
Right.
Because
or they should have been in jail.
One of them was Michael Flynn.
Right.
Another one was that marvelous guy, Martin Shkreli. He's the one who bought up a drug company, I think, or purchased a drug and then jacked up the price by 5,000%.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. He's now doing, he's in prison. They're all guilty, the ones who have done it. I'll get you some more here. Remember a guy named Mark McGuire, Susan?
Yeah, he was a
St. Louis
pitcher with forearms of cartoonish size because he used steroids, which I do believe he pleaded the fifth rather than admit to.
He pled the fifth, and he laid in front of Congress. But then later, he did acknowledge that, in fact, he had, the year he broke the home run record in a single season record, that, yeah, he was roided up.
Yeah, he wasn't a pitcher. He wasn't a pitcher. He was that hitter. He was the hitter. Yeah.
Right, Suze. He was the hitter, and he ended up not facing charges, but he ain't ever going to get into the Hall of Fame.
No.
Here, I got two more. These are blasts from the past. Pleading the fifth in front of a congressional committee, Jack Abramoff. He was that lobbyist who was in with all the power brokers. And he ended up being involved in an influence peddling scandal, right?
Yep.
And he spent more than 5 years in prison.
Right.
And then we have Kenneth Lay. That is the former CEO of Enron.
Didn't he die before they could put him in prison?
Yep. He was convicted of 6 counts later, and he died. This said I'd rather be dead than go to prison, so he died. So that's what So here's what we know: Eastman and what's his name, Jeffrey Clark, are obviously guilty of.
Well, I mean, what does
crime.
The Fifth Amendment say? It says that you can't be compelled to testify against yourself. Well, I mean, okay, so they can't make me say that I did those things they're saying I did, and I also refuse to say I didn't do them. Because that gives rise to a different crime that it might be easier to convict them of.
Yeah. It's not a good look
It's not a good look, but it's not lying.
Right.
Which is their other, they ain't going to tell the truth, so they either say nothing or they lie. And if they lie, then they're lying and they can be charged with lying. So, nope. But it's not a good look. Not a good look.
Nope. See if I can say nope again.
I'm just saying, you say, I'm just saying more than nope.
I read the saddest little, that wasn't little, it was long. The saddest long piece in the Washington Post about a high school teacher in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Did you read this? Did you?
No, I just read the headline. I know the guy that lost his job, the white man
was fired,
lost his job for teaching what
that for teaching that racism existed,
right,
and that there was such a thing as white privilege, and he loved challenging his overwhelmingly conservative white students to see things in a different way. And this is a guy who had a passion for teaching, who was clearly really good at it. And this story just breaks your heart. The class that got him fired he was teaching a class called Contemporary Issues. He had taught the course. This is where you looked into things that were actually happening, not history, happening now. And he taught it for 10 years. Not a single complaint. And then he made the mistake of telling his all-white class that white privilege is a fact. He also shared with them a video called White Privilege, which is a profane 4-minute poetry performance by a woman named Kyla Janae Lacey. And at one point she says, "Oh, am I making you uncomfortable? Try a cramped slave ship." And before this guy hit the play button, he actually laughed and said to his class, "I'll probably get fired for showing you this." And he was fired.
Well,
he was fired for teaching critical race theory, and he said,
he's never even heard of critical race theory.
He hadn't heard of it until it became this thing. And in fact, the Tennessee legislature, I guess in this regard, he broke a law. The Tennessee legislature is one of minimally 11 states, all, of course, Republican states, that have banned any of its schools or teachers from teaching. This is what the Tennessee law said. No teacher, no school can teach that, quote, an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive. Now, while I would agree that because somebody is white does not make them necessarily racist, or somebody is a male, that does not make them sexist, but I gotta tell you, the one thing in this law that is ridiculous is that you cannot teach that because of your race, that one race is inherently privileged over another. That is true in this country.
You can just look around and see that some of us have it easier than others, and most of us are one color.
So what's interesting is when he got fired, some of his students, who were all really conservative, one of whom had stormed out of his class once, they, once he was fired, got on his side and testified in his appeal to the school board. One of them, as a kid, he's still a fervent Republican, but he used to seek this teacher out, even between classes, because he really loved arguing with him about politics. Now, how is that not a great teacher?
That's exactly, that's what a teacher does. That's what a good teacher looks like. That's teaching people how to critically think.
Exactly.
Not teaching the outcome of what you think. Just that you get there through logic, reason, and fact.
This is so sad.
He'll get another job.
Well, but this is his home. This is where he grew up. This is where he lives. Here's another kid whose whole life was transformed. And in fact, because he grew up there, he, the teacher, was a young Republican as a teenager. He would get up early to watch Rush Limbaugh. He grew up absolutely believing everyone in America had an equal shot at getting somewhere by dint of hard work. And then he went to college and he started getting introduced to things that made him wonder about stuff. And like happens to some people, not all, he began to grow.
No, he just began to question what he had accepted as true.
Another kid, listen to this, stormed out of his class because in this contemporary issues class, they were talking about, remember when Trump wanted to have a big military parade in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
I forget, it was for July 4th. It's like, something the United States has never done.
It was right after he was inaugurated. He wanted a big parade immediately.
Right. And so this teacher brings that up in his class. And one of the kids, who is just totally ardent military supporter, argued with him that this was a wonderful thing to do, to pay tribute to the people who served in the military. And the teacher said, but most democracies don't do this kind of thing. Countries like China, Russia, North Korea, they're the ones who do military parades. And the kid went berserk. He said, I'm out of here, you leftist snowflake, and stormed out of the room. The next day, the teacher raises the topic again. And he pointedly asked the kid, if you care so much for the military, why wouldn't you take the money that it's going to cost to throw this big parade, as it's going to cost a lot of money, and give it to the VA? Give it to the Veterans Administration. That'll actually help the vets. And the kid said it hit him like a punch, and I didn't have an answer. This guy is such an incredible teacher. It's so
and a courageous teacher, and you know, it's believe me, I faced a group of smart high school students as a teacher, and it's not for the faint of heart. I went to law school forthwith.
So when he finally finds out that his appeal was put aside, and here's how the story in the Washington Post ends. In the coming weeks, his name is Hawn, Hawn. Hawn would file yet another appeal to the school board, try one more time to get his job back. But that Friday, after calling his mother, all he could do was sit in silence at his kitchen table. His head slumped forward until it reached his outstretched arms. He let it rest there, hiding his tears. They broke him. 6-1, they voted on his appeal, saying he had failed to learn anything from a previous reprimand. Oh, so I just, I mean, it's a beautifully written piece. And because I have not said his name, Matthew Hawn, Hawn, Kingsport, Tennessee. And he is now unemployed and heartbroken. And Kingsport, Tennessee has lost probably the best
teacher,
high school teacher they had. You know,
and you know, the point is that man really did have, I can guarantee you, lifelong influences on his class.
Sure.
And those kids that came forward to testify to that fact, that he taught them how to think and argue respectfully, and how to hear and how to question. That's exactly what you want each and every one of your teachers to do. That is at the base of everything they do. A teacher doesn't just teach their subject. They are modeling character at the same time. And if you don't have a teacher that can do that, then they're missing half the job. And especially in this world where, for various reasons, kids come into classrooms where they don't have that kind of consistent model of good character.
Exactly.
That is teaching at the same time. It's terribly, terribly important. And I'm using that adjective for a reason, because the consequences of not having it truly are terrible.
Terrible. And I want to talk, we really got a minute left. I just want to talk about how chilling I found this story, because knowing that at this point, as many as 20 states in this country are literally criminalizing and getting rid of any teacher who dares to challenge their students in this way. That is in the same, that's like book burning, and we're going to be seeing that again. This is the kind of thing that fascists do. And as I was looking at this picture of this wonderful man, I thought of all the teachers in Germany, in the great teachers, some of them great scientists, some of them geniuses, who were thrown out of their schools and not allowed to teach because they were Jews or because they were a little lefty, because their politics weren't right. And this is what happens when these autocratic types, which is what we got big time in the Republican Party now, try to stifle anything that suggests that what they're peddling is not true. Tries to stifle, they will stifle, and they're doing it.
They are stifling.
And they're taking over school boards. I just saw that a school board near here, North Allegheny, big district, Susan, big suburban district, just got there in the recent election. That's now a majority Republican school board. Watch what's going to happen there.
You know, the one thing that school boards have always tried not to be, you don't run as a Republican or a Democrat.
Exactly right. Nor do they hear, but everybody knows. Right. Nor do they hear. So, God, unbelievable. All right. Well, that's it, I think.
Oh, dear.
So,
okay.
I'm glad you're home in Chicago.
I am. I'm getting ready to receive our niece from London.
When?
On Friday.
Oh gosh, you're so lucky.
Yeah.
Oh God, I wish I could be there.
Well,
God, are they
okay with me?
So they're coming with the baby.
The baby.
Wow. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And,
talk soon.
Thank you, Suze. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And bye to all of you. And sorry the way I left you yesterday. Man, I got myself worked up into a rant, which was not particularly generous to Christians. And I do apologize for that. I was spewing something with a very broad brush, but I had Gandhi on my side. So I think that's what I'm blaming Gandhi. Okay. As he's the one who said, I like your Christ. I don't like your Christians. Or something like that. There, I did it again. And now I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.